Serious, what terrifying situation have you been in where you had to fight for your survival? I didn't physically fight, but here goes. One day I was walking home from school. I was in 4th grade or so and lived about 5 blocks away in the school that was inside my suburban neighborhood. To set the scene, the day was pretty cold, so a lot of my friends that lived a little further were being picked up, so I was walking alone. Halfway home, a red Ford Taurus slowed down next to me and an Asian woman inside told me my mom sent her to get me. Her vibe was horribly creepy, so I turned down the closest street, started to walk down hoping she'd just keep driving. She followed. She just kept pace with my walking speed, about 10 steps behind me. The street was a dead end. Once I reached the end, she pulled up again and insisted I get in the car. My mom was in the hospital and I needed to get home. The back door started to open. I saw a man about 30 moving to get out. I turned and ran between some houses and ended up on a street where a good friend of mine lived. I went in his backyard and just sat under the deck for a while. Eventually I felt safe enough to run home. I never saw that car again. That's a attempted kidnapping if I ever heard one. I was stabbed by one of my squad members for refusing to deal drugs for them. This was in a guard outpost about 2 kilometers from anything, right in the middle of nowhere. My squad mate stabbed me and left me. I had to crawl to our guardhouse, avoid another person who was in on it, and then wake up one of my friends to call me an ambulance. All of it while bleeding from 3 stab wounds. Whoa, WTF. Please expand on the story. This sounds crazy. I guess closest I have come is saving my friend from drowning in a river in Australia. We had gone across the river and then saw a sign that said, "Do not enter, crocodile nesting area," so we swam back. He wasn't able to fight the current, so I had to go back across and swim him back. I almost drowned doing it. While I was a Peace Corps volunteer living in Ethiopia, I found myself in a dangerous situation one evening. A man in my small, rural town developed feelings towards me and attempted to take advantage of me after I had had a few beers one night. We were all drinking and had planned to stay the night at a local tourist eco resort, and long story short, the man let himself into my hut. Think fancy hut, something out of Travel and Leisure magazine. He wouldn't leave, so I casually mentioned I needed to use the restroom, and once I made it to the front door, I hailed butt to the main gates. The man was quickly behind me and yelling at the security guard not to let me pass. In my drunken stupor, I realized the only way through would be to climb the 15-foot tall metal gate, which I did, and promptly fell off the top on the other way down. I proceeded to run the 2 kilometer to my house compound, dodging all of the known wildlife, hyenas and aggressive monkeys. I woke up the next morning to several injuries, but overall I was in one piece. Frick that guy. Got a throat infection, croup, when I was 6. Usually it's mild, severe in less than 1% of the people, and it nearly killed me. I just came home from school on a normal day and I suddenly started getting trouble breathing and I started coughing. Few moments later the GP comes in and tells my mom to call 911. They say a croup isn't serious, so the GP grabs the phone and starts yelling at them to get the goddamn ambulance. First thing I do in the ambulance is throw up. Then it's a crazy ride to the hospital where they put me in an induced coma. I woke up 6 days later. To this day I don't know if what I remember is dreams from the coma or just memories of me being high on drugs. Probably mostly the latter, as I have memories of clowns and my brother always tells me I was cursing the clowns like a mofo. GP general practitioner, your local doctor. Once was sledding and hit a tree. I was like 6 and I really wanted to go to sleep, but I didn't because my brother said not to. Turns out I cracked my skull, and if I went to sleep I likely would never wake up again. I was grabbed by a stranger while out jogging. He grabbed me in a chokehold and dragged me into some bushes. I am very small and knew I couldn't fight him. I decided I'd comply with a sexual assault but fight like heck if it looked like he was going to kill me. As we were scrabbling in foliage, I said, "Please don't do this. I have 2 kids." Not sure why I added the kid part. Fortunately, as he was starting to unbutton his pants, he got cold feet or something and ran away. I had some scratches and a sore neck, but that's it. I flagged down a cyclist, who helped me contact the police. Never found the guy. I'm very glad you're okay. I cannot imagine how incredibly terrifying that was. It's a situation I always fear when I'm out running. TLDR. I almost went off through a cliff. I was out fishing by myself one day out in the middle of nowhere and decided to hike even further back to fish a stretch of river. At one point the small trail I was on went up a hill while following the river. When I was about 60 feet above the river I stepped to the edge to look down at the river. Apparently, there was an undercut right where I stepped out. I broke through the remaining dirt and started to fall. I lucked out because I fell right between two roots of a tree that was further back away from the edge. The roots caught in my armpits. My feet were dangling about 50 feet above the rocks below. I took a little while to climb back out because I had to shimmy my way back far enough to get a foothold that didn't give way. I was eventually able to get out and hike down to the river and get right below where I had fallen. I lost a hat and a tackle box from my fishing vest when I fell through and wanted to recover what I could. When I looked up I could see the hole I had made. There were only the two roots. I literally fell through the only spot I could have survived. That's crazy luck. I lost two co-workers up at Glacier National Park that fell off of cliffs. One of them fell 1,000 or so feet, the other only 60. Same result. I was with a buddy of mine and we decided to drive from Paris to Marseilles, but we kind of decided on a whim and didn't get started till late afternoon. We realized that in the dark we were driving past a bunch of really cool castles that we couldn't see in the dark, so we decided we would stop at a roadside bathroom stop and sleep until morning so we could see the castles. We were there about 15 minutes when I noticed a semi-tractor trailer truck with some dudes getting out of it. One guy was sneaking around the back of the truck with what looked like a tire iron in his hand. And then suddenly I noticed there were about 5 or 6 dudes slowly surrounding our rental car in the dark. Peeled the frick out of there. Drove about another hour until we got to a supermarket. Parked under a light and took turns 2 hours on guard while the other person slept. Those guys definitely had a plan to frick us up and rob us. My buddy was a Peace Corps volunteer in Africa and worked for a mine in the DRC. And when he told me that he was scared, that's when I got scared. Back in college, almost attempted abduction. This was in Asia when it happened. I was riding a jeepney and was riding up front. Look up, jeepneys are the regular commute vehicles in countries like the Philippines and Thailand. It was raining and I was the only passenger around 7:30 at night. I decided to sit at front right next to the driver so it's easier to get off. Driver was already acting weird towards what would be a short drive. Made a sharp turn on a tall grassy knoll where I know there was a cliff. Claimed there was a problem with the tires, but still kept driving further away from the road. I asked to be let off. He won't answer, and when I tried to go he attempted to reach out to me. Since the jeepney was driving off road it slowed down a bit. Took my chance and jumped along with my bag and umbrella, which I planned on stabbing him with if he chased after me. I know the main road wasn't that far. I just needed to get there. It was pouring raining out, so I can imagine the surprise of the other commuter vehicles when they saw me, a girl drenched in rain, running from a grassy area, which was pretty secluded, and stripped onto the highway road, flagging them down. Thank God another vehicle stopped for me. I got in, they took me home, and I can still remember the jeepney driver speeding away. So much for tire issues. Yes, I filed a report, but since I didn't get a license plate and there are many jeepneys on that route, nothing short of a warning was done afterwards. I was out with a friend who was drinking pretty heavily, and she was pretty insistent on going back to this guy's house to hang out. We had never met him or his friend, so I was naturally skeptical. I'd never been to the area though, and didn't have a means of transportation, so I stupidly followed along. After being there for an hour, things got wild. Both of us were assaulted to various degrees, and found that we were locked in the house. Fortunately, I was sober and able to navigate things to best of my ability. I had to lock myself in the bathroom to make a call to someone, who then called my parents. Then, had to fight my way out after one of the men busted down the door. We eventually made it to their front door. We were met by one of the guys, throwing our stuff into the street. Not a huge deal, until he punched me in the face. That was not cool. After that, grabbed someone's keys, got in the car and drove my friend and I to her car. We immediately went to a hospital, and my parents showed up the next morning to make sure we got everything handled with the police. When I made it home, I didn't leave my parents' house for 2 weeks. To sum things up, Never get in the car with a stranger, no matter how drunk your best friend is. Yeah, this happened to me when I was in my late teens. Nothing anywhere near as violent or serious, but we ended up in a house with some very unsavory and questionable characters and I did not feel safe there at all. Seriously, kids, don't let your drunk friend talk you into doing something that puts you in jeopardy. There are really bad people out there. Living in the Yukon, Canada, I was hiking alone in the bush and approached by a coyote looking to get a bite out of me. Had to scream at it and kick it in the face while I slowly backed away from it for about a half kilometer. Luckily he didn't have any buddies to get me from my backside. Fell into a very cold creek one winter, visiting my aunt and uncle in Indiana when I was 12. My insulated boots sucked up the water and became incredibly heavy. It took me 3 tries to find a branch that didn't just break off in my hands to pull myself out, all while I'm treading water in 10-pound boots. Dang, that was scary as heck, I bet. I signed up for this just to post this, after a month or 2 lurking. I was 17, leaving my Air Cadet Squadron UK. I was on a pedal bike, at around 10 o'clock at night, pitch black. I was turning right, and as I made my way out into the road, a car came from the right, no headlights on, and knocked me off the bike. I landed slap bang in the middle of the road, disorientated and confused. I slowly come around and crawl out of the road. My leg was broken, and I had to physically drag myself by my forearms, terrified of another car coming and running over me. I made it, with another car coming about 2 seconds later. Terrifying, but made it and lived to tell the tale. Saved my brother from getting dragged and drowned by a river current. Managed to pull him out after he tripped during a travel with my folks and my relatives. Similar thing happened to me when I was a kid. Me and my family were abroad and I was out swimming. Got too far out, it was grabbed by the current. I wasn't such a strong swimmer at the time. Luckily, one of the few words I knew in English was "help me." Some older man heard me and got me back to shore. I fought in a war. For a period of 6 weeks we got in a firefight at least once a day. Our record was 5 separate firefights in one day. One time we got in one that lasted 15 hours. Believe it or not, you get used to it pretty quick, and it stops being terrifying. A situation involving abusive ex. So, I was at ex-boyfriend's house. He was very drunk and I was somewhat tipsy. We got into an argument about normal things that couples argue about. This was the first time he ever laid a hand on me. After a few hours of arguing, I said, "I'm leaving. Let's talk about this first thing in the morning." He insisted that I can't leave and I must not care about him at all if I leave right now. I insisted that we should just continue the conversation tomorrow when we're both sober. So, he grabs my phone, car keys, and wallet and hides them. Then when I insist he give them back, he sits on top of me, straddling me like a stripper giving a lap dance, and pins my arms down so I can't move. When I started fighting to get up, he strangled me so hard I couldn't breathe. Twice. After crying and begging, he finally got off me but wouldn't tell me where my phone and keys were. After what seemed like an eternity, I found my keys and ran out the front door. He chased after me, but I got out just fast enough to get in the car and drive before he could grab me. I'm so peed at myself for not reporting that to the police. Shortly after I broke up with him, he threw his new pregnant girlfriend down the stairs. Ex-husband was an extreme alcoholic. He snapped one night, yanked me out of a dead sleep by my scalp hair, dragged me down a hallway while telling me he's gonna kill me. Somehow fought him off while he was punching my face on the living room couch, ran to the kitchen, grabbed 2 knives. As I ran down the hall, he was a step behind me. I went into the spare bedroom, slammed and locked door, pushing on it still cause he was thrashing on it. A huge kitchen knife stabbed through the door, right next to my head. I tried to go out the only window in the room, pushed an AC unit out, and was climbing out the window. He broke in, grabbed my thighs, and yanked me back in the house. I remember him grabbing my throat, dragging me down to the basement hot tub room, and losing consciousness. I woke up to him hanging dead. He thought he had killed me. It was supposed to be a murder-suicide. I'm haunted to this day. I can't even imagine the trauma this must have caused you then and even now. I hope you're in a safe place now. Feel free to PM me if you need to vent or just talk to someone. TLDR, I am not afraid of chickens anymore. When I was little I was stuck at my grandparents' farm for about a month. There was this alpha rooster that was very territorial. One day, when my grandparents were away shopping in the town, I was walking around the farm minding my own business when this butthole approaches me from behind and tries to jump me. I start running away. This butthole chases me for half a mile until I realize I can't outrun him and turn around to face him. He jumps me again. I dodge him and pick up a rock and start yelling at him to frick off. He ain't gonna. He makes several attempts, aiming for my face. I throw the rock and hit him right in the chest, which gives me several seconds to catch my breath and start running towards the main house. I wasn't sure if he was chasing me still. I was too freaked out to turn around, but I made it and hid in the house for several hours before everyone was back. I tell this story to my grandfather. He is a very strict and stern man with no balls at it. So he grabs me and walks outside to find the rooster. He grabs his hunting knife on the way out and hands it to me. He catches the rooster and holds him down. Then he tells me to cut its throat. There is a point when you are so scared that all your fear suddenly turns into anger. As soon as I realized I could kill him, I did. I cut its throat. We had a delicious chicken soup that evening. When my grandmother attacked him about making me kill the rooster, he looked her dead in the eye and said, "If I didn't, I will be known for being a grandfather of a man who is afraid of chickens." No more questions were asked. Simple man. Can't be the grandfather of a man who is afraid of chickens after all. Driving down a 2-lane highway, 1 AM in a rural area. I borrowed a friend's Ford Focus which has the spare tire on. My boss traveling companion this night decides to slam the horn at some stranger standing still at a stop sign. Stranger makes his left. I'm upset with the boss. In the rear view I see the stranger reverse his truck back onto the main road. It seems he wants a word. A 10-mile chase ensues with top speed of 110 on a 2-lane road, with a spare tire, in the middle of nowhere. Going around a curve, I knew I hit the lights on the car and turned off onto a hidden drive and waited. Waited for about 15 minutes silently. Eventually turned the lights on and discovered that I was 2 feet from nosediving into a ditch. I was high on adrenaline the next 2 days, and my friend never loaned me his car again. When I was 19 years old, I drunkenly fell from one of my dormitory common room's windows. It was a 45-foot drop, 4 stories up from the concrete awning over the porch. I fell out backwards, head first, and plummeted to what appeared to be my inevitable death. In such moments we hear of time slowing down. It did feel like that. My primal mind took control and found an instantaneous solution to my mortal problem. The solution presented itself so quickly it felt as if there was no problem at all. I reached out my hand and grabbed hold of a ledge as I fell. This reduced my velocity and swung me back around so that I landed onto the gravel-covered awning feet first. The impact was violent. I shattered my left calcaneus, heel, and suffered an open, compound fracture of my right tib fib, lower leg bones. That was the 15th of May, 2001. 4 months later, after 9/11, the news sources were elaborating on the tragedy. They were specifically speaking about survival rates of people falling out of buildings. They were saying only 15% of people that fall from a 3-story window would survive. That's survival including paralyzing injuries. I never did find out survival rates for 4-story drops without a paralyzing injury. I just know I'm extremely fortunate to be alive and in the shape I'm in, leading the life I have. I try my best to keep that memory clear in my mind so that I will move forward without fear or regret, filled with gratitude and love. Like 10 years ago when I was dealing drugs, guy and his buddy pulled a knife on me. I'm a small guy, not intimidating at all, but was in good shape at the time. Performed a wrist break and pull, grabbed the knife out of his hand and slammed it into his arm and ran like heck up 2 blocks, cut through a field, across a busy street and into a mall. Went into Old Navy, bought completely new set of clothes and a hat and called my buddy to pick me up. Wandered around in Macy's and Sears for 15 minutes until he got there. That's intense. Good job reacting as fast as you did. TLDR. I needed the cops. Had to get escorted to my van. Doesn't matter. Got the evidence I needed. I used to be a private investigator and around 90% of my cases were mortgage fraud or fidelity. This one case took me to Central NJ. The mark was supposed to be in a wheelchair and was collecting a ton of disability. She posted on her Facebook she was going to a state fair and I was given the order to record her. Not only was she not in a wheelchair, she had better hip mobility than me. She was recording her son playing with her camera as I was recording her. She sat down and stood up almost 10 times perfectly. So, I was in the back recording her and I forgot about the other daughter. She apparently saw me and told the husband I was there. He and I had been talking. I had big balls and liked chatting up my marks if I was pursuing them in public. In retrospect, this was probably against the rules. He then comes over and asks me why I was recording his wife. I can tell he's getting pee. I looked him straight in the eye and said, give me one moment. I will be absolutely happy to explain to you. I put my camera into my backpack and booked it. This was a county fair and I ran until I got to the sheriff's department tent. I threw my hands up and said, officer, I am an investigator here on a case. I am being pursued. I'd like assistance. The cop was shocked. Dad turns a corner and has literally like 10 teenagers, his son's friends, all of them chasing me down. The balk when they see me talking to the cops. The cop knows this guy, and he starts believing the guy that I was doing indecent recordings or some crap and he asks to see the recording. I explained to him that everything I have recorded is evident in an ongoing investigation and unless he is placing me under arrest, which I would be perfectly happy to accept, I am instructed by my employer not to allow anyone to view the evidence I have gathered. The cop really hates this. I then tell him, look, just walk me to my car and I'll hit the road and won't stop till I'm out of the state. Otherwise this guy will jump me on my way to my car, may actually kill me. He's got like 10 guys with him. Cop agrees he's not going to be complicit in my murder and walks me to my car calling me suspicious and nothing you're saying adds up. I only reply with, look, I have an investigator number. I can call my boss, he has it. I don't know what more I can do. Pies don't get badges. Cop tells me to get lost and that if he ever sees me again, yada yada yada. I get in my car. All me boss. Report what happened. He's like, holy crap. Well, glad you're okay. We'll get someone else on them tomorrow. I've had a few close calls in life, but the most fighting I ever did was fending off a shark. Granted it wasn't very big, but I was young and skinny. Can't remember the type of shark, but it was maybe 3 feet long and chilling out underneath the sailboat. We had spent most of that summer sailing up and down the east coast, but this was off of Key West near Fort Jefferson. We sailed our 40 feet catamaran over and anchored near the lighthouse nearby and my family went diving. Being 13 I didn't go along but decided to swim around the boat. The water was 10-12 feet deep and so I would dive in with goggles and swim about the bottom for 20 seconds before coming back up. After one particular jump I swear I saw a dark shape flit under the hull but didn't get much chance to think about it. As I hit the water I dove down, spun around and looked back up to see this menacing looking thing just chilling in our boat's shadow. Catamarans are extremely wide and form a sort of H so that 2 hulls are in the water with space in between. I came back up between the hulls and ended up basically kicking and waving my flippers at him to keep him at bay. It pretty much just kept my legs between me and him until I could reach the rail or ladder and clamber out. To this day I'm not even sure he was after me, but just chilling in the shade. But at 13 I was terrified being within arm's length of a shark alone. TLDR, I fought off a shark that was hanging out under our boat. Whether or not he wanted to eat me was not on my mind. If it was in the Florida Keys area, it probably was a nurse shark. Those things are as tame as sharks come, they probably wouldn't attack unless provoked and cornered. Source: me and 5 friends chased a 4-foot-long nurse shark in the Florida Keys while snorkeling. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.